You've decided you're ready to become a parent, and suddenly you're overwhelmed with people who feel they have the right to inform you on the correct way to conceive, give birth, what fears you should have, and the proper way to parent. How do you filter through the opinions? How do you know what's trustworthy information and what's a myth or just plain outdated? Welcome to the Birth Ease podcast. Join your host Michelle Smith and her guests as they cut through the noise and fear by sharing valuable tips, tools, and proven methods that help you connect with your own inner wisdom as you navigate the sacred journey that is pregnancy, birth, and parenthood in a more relaxed and confident manner. This podcast does not constitute, nor is it intended, as medical advice.
Hello, Birth Ease families. Welcome to this heartfelt space. I'm your host, Michelle Smith, and I'm so grateful you are here. This COVID-19 pandemic has brought so much uncertainty, and it raises so many fears for families as they navigate their pregnancy and their birth. The ever-changing guidelines regarding prenatal care, the ability to have more than one support person with them during birth, whether or not they'll be required to wear a mask, and they may be facing isolation in their postpartum period with their new baby. Therefore, I thought it might be helpful to have some of my family share their experiences of pregnancy and birth during this COVID-19 pandemic. In this episode, I'm so thrilled to have with me today one of my dear families, Byuanni and James, and you may even hear their sweet little boy in the background during our conversation. Welcome, Byuanni and James, to the Birth Ease podcast. I am so incredibly grateful to have you here with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
We're excited to be here.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. And so I just appreciate you taking this time to share your experience of giving birth, because so many families now are facing the uncertainty of giving birth during this pandemic. And so sharing your story, I think, really can provide some comfort and guidance in what to expect.
Absolutely.
So do you mind sharing how the pandemic impacted your pregnancy?
So the pandemic, I feel like it just put a strain on your overall planning, to be honest. Being pregnant, it was scary, to say the least. I was just terrified of just stepping outside the door. And then the fact that my boyfriend had to continue working, it was fearful, you know. I used to make him come home and have to remove his shoes and his clothes before coming inside the door just to make sure that nothing made it inside of the house.
Right. And you gave birth end of April. So this was when the pandemic began, and we still don't know a lot of what we're dealing with, but it was so uncertain then.
Absolutely. It was terrifying, especially because at the time that I was approaching labor, we weren't even sure if they were going to allow our partners into the hospital.
Yes.
That to me was my biggest fear, just to imagine going through something so, in a way, traumatic. It's a big thing in your life, and not to have someone who you can just hold their hand or just feel some type of comfort. So you'll be surrounded by strangers. That was my absolute biggest fear at all, was to be by myself.
Yeah.
But luckily, they did allow one person to come with me. But the other thing about that made it hard is that if either he or I ended up sick or had a temperature of a certain number or above, immediately that would cause for me to go into birth by myself. So another thing that added fear of him having to be at work, because if he ended up sick, I'm going to have to do this by myself. So that actually brought some problems into our relationship, because he understood that it was a big thing, but at the same time, it, how do I say this?
It put strain on the relationship because, I had to provide, and my thing was things were so uncertain right now, because it's like if I don't go make money,
Right.
you don't know if the banks are going to shut down. Yeah, I was just scrambling, just trying to make okay. And the fact that I would get home, and it was frustrating but understandable. But yeah, I did have to strip at the door, go straight to the shower, and just take the precautions, whatever it took to be able to be there with her and to comfort her through this thing. And even at that point, things weren't even exactly certain. But it was really a trying time, and we were just trying to make it through and do the best we can, bring him into this world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember our conversations that we would have about what are we going to do if James can't be there at the birth, and how are we going to navigate that? And perhaps I should labor at home for a long time, or finish up part of my labor. It's not too hard. Maybe I want to labor in the parking lot so I have him with me as long as I can. And it was really trying times because New York had not allowed any partners at all. And then they changed it, and then they allowed doulas as well. But that, I remember how stressful that was.
It was terrifying. Again, like to go through something like that by yourself and as a new mom, first time mom, not knowing. I mean, I'm the type of person too that I kind of have a hard time opening up to strangers. So to me, having somebody that I know, a common face, just brings so much peace of mind and, will make my experience just better overall. But yeah, that was the plan. Fear will make you think about some crazy things. And that crazy thing was like, if they don't allow him, most of my labor is going to be in the parking lot
At the Altamont Mall.
at the Altamont Mall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's so close. Yeah.
Because again, it's just terrifying to think about going through that by yourself. So luckily, again, they allowed him into the hospital, but
So, how are you navigating now? I'm in Orange County where the cases are so high now. Are you still showering as soon as you get home, James? Or are you guys feeling a little more comfortable than you did in your pregnancy?
My line of work, the projects range. Like, I have residential projects, commercial projects, and things like that. At the time when all this jumped off, I was working on a commercial project, which was a restaurant.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Well, even at that time, the volume of people was extremely low, but you're looking at people and you're just like, you got it? Do you have it? Do you have it? So
Mm-hmm.
as time went on, the project switched to residential and the clients weren't home. So it was more like, I'm just going to work. If I have to go to the supply store, that was the only point of contact I would have in the day,
Okay.
working by myself all day and then just coming home. So yes, some days, yeah, but it would just be if I was in contact with other people or if I had gone to the food store, or Walmart or something where there was a lot of people.
Okay.
Precaution about that.
mhm.
Yeah.
As time has gone on, like he's now 3 months old, I feel like we have become a little more at ease with things. We're not as intense as we were like during the pregnancy and right after he was born. And I think that's just our human nature of like, we've been going through this for so long. It's kind of in a way like you just get numb to it.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
I mean, we still take our precautions that we're constantly washing our hands. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as you come into the house, first things first, go wash your hands.
Same.
And we make sure to always take off our shoes at the entrance. Don't walk into the house with your dirty shoes. But no, I don't make James strip before coming inside the door. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we just didn't know. You were hearing so many conflicting things. And when it first happened, because I live with elderly people, I would go to the grocery store and we would clean the groceries outside, and then I would go get in the shower and shower before I had any interaction with anybody because it's so much uncertainty.
and that's the thing. It's just you don't know because you hear one thing, then you hear the other, and then you look at the death toll, and it's scary to think like, well, if I don't do this one time, this could possibly lead to something huge and terrible. So it's conflicting, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is that bit though where you start to get a little numb and I've relaxed some, but it's just so much uncertainty. So how did that play out in your birth?
So the birthing itself actually wasn't bad. So at the hospital, what they pretty much made you do was wear a mask.
Okay.
In triage, both of us had to wear a mask at all times. Once you were assigned to your room, and once you left triage and went to your personal room, you had to have your mask on when nurses or others entered in your room. But if it was just you and your partner, you were allowed to take your mask off.
Okay.
So it wasn't too bad in that sense. What did make it somewhat uneasy is the fact that you are coming in contact with multiple people, especially because your nurses are changing every 12 hours or something like that. So that had me a bit worried and scared because, again, you're kind of putting your trust in these people that, they're also taking the precautions in their life for them not to be infected and be bringing it to your place.
Yeah. Right. And you were hoping to be there as short as you could be. Like you want to go in to the hospital hot and heavy in labor,
Right.
but things unfolded that didn't happen.
No. So my plan, because that's the thing, we all have a plan, right?
Right.
The plan doesn't go accordingly, and that's exactly what happened. The plan was that I wanted to labor as long as I possibly could at home. And then I was going to labor at home, and then from there, I was going to go to literally the mall parking lot and labor as close as I could to birth. They didn't allow my partner in. And then go to the hospital to minimize the time of being in the hospital itself, right?
Right.
But I started feeling my contractions the evening, I think, what was it? It was the evening before I made it into the hospital. But regardless, I had to go in the following day because I had hit my 41 weeks. So they had to make sure that my amniotic fluid and that the baby was doing okay in order for me to come home.
Yeah.
But it turned out that my amniotic fluid was low, so I had to stay at the hospital. And then I was going to have to get induced, which to me was absolutely terrifying. That was the one thing that I did not want whatsoever. As you know, I wanted to have a natural birth, and
Right.
with being induced, the pain can come very rapidly and lead to other things that I didn't want. When they told me that I had to be induced, again, it was just instant fear and panic. Luckily, I had you in my life. You were the person that I reached out to because I just didn't know.
Yeah. Here you wanted a natural birth and then you're facing this induction. And so we managed to talk it through
Yes.
and to help you make that decision, which I'm so grateful that you did reach out to me so we could do that. And to figure out, was this really legitimate or were they just wanting to induce you because you were 41 weeks and that's the protocol? And so many questions
Right,
and that sudden change of plans.
right. So, I mean, again, I was so blessed to have you in our lives because you were my contact.
Mhm.
And once I spoke to you, I had that peace of mind because I trust you. Even though the doctor had told me that, listen, your amniotic fluid is low, it's like something inside of me, like, still kind of didn't trust him necessarily because, as I told you before, the doctor said, as the moment I stepped into the hospital, what he wanted was to get induced from the very beginning.
Right, right.
So once I was told about my amniotic fluid being low, I got scared, and I also kind of felt like I was being pushed into an induced. But once I spoke to you and I told you the number that they had given me, you confirmed that yes, it was time, and you helped me through it immensely. And that's when everything that I learned through your classes like kicked in. Like it just, I gave myself a few minutes, a couple of minutes to just go through it. I cried it out
Mhm.
and it was like, okay, we're done. Like now it's game time. I'm just going to focus. Now I'm going to kickstart everything that I learned. I'm going to, keep my mind clear, breathe, and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
That's how we went into that. Once we made it into the room, luckily the plan was that they were going to give me 3 different types of medications to get me induced. I don't remember what the first one was, the name of it, but pretty much what they say was it kind of resembled like a tampon, to be honest, with the look.
Cervidil. Did they do Cervidil with the tampon?
That's the one that they did. So that was gonna be the first one. The second one was gonna be some balloons, as they call it.
Yeah.
And then it was gonna be the Pitocin.
Okay.
That was my plan of labor. Another thing that they had mentioned that scared the living heck out of me was that I was possibly going to be in the hospital for 3 whole days.
Yeah.
I was going to be in labor. They made it seem like that process was extremely long.
Yeah.
So that just completely freaked me out.
Right. Because it can be for some mamas if they're only 39 weeks pregnant and their cervix isn't favorable and all of that. It can be this 3-day process. It's scary. I know it's scary, especially when you don't want to be there that long. But sometimes I feel like parents go in and they think they're going to have a baby in 12 hours and it doesn't happen,
We're just like, yeah, she's going to go in, pop, get out. Everything's good. Take the baby home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go that way. It was completely different. It was everything turned out good. It was, but thanks to you, because honestly, we were in there. Some of the things were said. We had questions. We didn't just let them do whatever they wanted to do. We didn't give them a hard time either, but it was.
We made it clear what is it that we wanted, and honestly, I did respect and enjoy that they respect our decisions. Like I never felt like I was pressured into anything really. So
yeah, that hospital's good about that. I think they are very respectful.
Yeah, really, in my experience of a baby, everything that went down, it was awesome. I would definitely recommend somebody go there because they took care of us.
yeah. So backtracking, going back to our labor plan. So they started me off with Cervidil, and the way that it works is you're supposed to leave it in for 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on where I was, we were going to get started with the balloons. So for me, the Cervidil itself was in me for 10 hours because I accidentally fell out. But at that time, I was lucky. I was fortunate enough that my body it picked up where it left off with the Cervidil and started contracting and doing what it had to do on its own. So I didn't need to get any other type of medications. It started working as it needed to be.
Yeah.
So I just didn't need the other medications, which I was so lucky and fortunate because I was terrified of Pitocin.
Yeah. Yeah. And every once in a while, Cervidil will do that, especially if your body's ready. And that's one of the things I like about Cervidil is sometimes it'll just kickstart a mama into a nice labor. And I'm so grateful that happened for you.
Mm-hmm. So the thing about me is that I was contracting, but I wasn't dilating.
Okay.
So I had been in labor for 10 hours, right? When I got to the hospital, I was only half an inch dilated.
Okay.
When I was done with Cervidil, I had been in labor already for 10 hours, and I was only 1 centimeter dilated.
Okay.
And I had already been in pain going through all of that. But once they came in and they told me that I was only 1 centimeter dilated and I had already been going through that for 10 hours, I was like, forget it. I was like, I cannot handle this. Please give me something.
Right.
So they offered me something through the IV and the epidural.
Okay.
I went with the epidural because my main concern was that I didn't want my baby feeling the effects of the medication.
Yeah.
They said if I was to do the IV, that he would feel a little like loopy in a way, and I didn't want that. So that's why I decided to want the epidural, which was another huge fear of mine.
Right.
I already have pre-existing back problems, and I've heard so many horror stories. But I did what had to be done. Once I got the epidural, I was able to relax and I fell asleep.
Which is exactly what we want.
Yeah, so I was finally able to, my body was finally able to relax. And that's when my body started doing what it needed to do. Now we fast forward, I think I fell asleep for 5 hours, 6 hours. The nurse came in, they went and they checked to see how far I was, and I had bumped up to 9 centimeters.
Wow. That's just ideal.
Right?
That's so ideal. Get your epidural, go to sleep, dilate.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. That's the ideal.
Well, she came inside and she's like, well, guess how far you are? And the way that everything had been going, I was like, oh my God, I'm only 2 centimeters. Go ahead and tell me, And she's like, no. So that was a celebration right there. That's what James.
Yeah.
I woke up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's game time. That's great.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm so grateful.
So they gave me another, I want to say an hour and a half to see if I would complete the last barrier. And I actually didn't even make it. When the doctor came in, an hour and a half later, and she's like, look, the baby is ready. You can see him right there. If you want to, we can get this show started and we can start pushing. So I was like, okay, let's go ahead and do it. Luckily, that didn't take too much either. I would say about 3 rounds of pushing, and then here he comes.
Wow, that's great.
8.1 baby boy.
Wow.
So the overall birthing experience, it was scary in the beginning, yes, but it was all meant to be, because little did we know was that my son had the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck twice. So that's one thing that I skipped that. And while I was sleeping, every hour they came in and they were switching me around because his heart rate kept jumping. That was because they thought it was because of the position that I was in, that his heart rate kept spiking. But once I gave birth, we found out that it was really because the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck twice.
And you had relive fluid. Yeah. So that would make his heart rate go down.
Yeah. So again, it was scary, but that was planned, that God had me. I'm just lucky that we did get it done right there and then, because I don't know what would happen to my baby, if I would have been putting him at risk. So
yeah. Yeah. And how wonderful that you only had to push maybe 3 contractions. That's amazing. And did you have to wear your mask? That's a big question that I'm going to insert right here, because moms are so worried about wearing their mask and pushing, and how are they going to be able to breathe to do that?
No, so they didn't make me wear my mask.
Okay.
The rule was that once you were in your room, you had to keep your mask on while there was others in the room with you. So any doctor.
Okay.
I feel like they were lenient with us.
Okay.
Because there were times, I was sleeping and I didn't have my mask on, and they will come in, and it was okay for some. And I think that's just them just being humane with us, because it's what we're going through. We're in the middle of labor. So I think it was also a difficult thing for them to kind of enforce, oh, you got to put your mask on because I'm about to check you,
Right.
So while pushing, no, they did not make me wear my mask.
Okay.
Now, is that something that they were doing? I'm not sure.
Yeah, moms are really worried about that. So, and I'm finding from what I'm hearing that when mamas are pushing, at least here in Central Florida, if they are not wanting to wear their mask, the staff has on their PPE, so they're not enforcing it very strictly.
Right,
Yeah.
right, which is good,
Yeah. It's hard to push out a baby. Yeah.
It's the one thing that you have to do in order to get the baby out is breathe. So with a mask, that makes it really, really hard. No, I didn't have to wear that thing.
Okay. Okay, good. And so he was born and doing well. Did the postpartum, how did that go in the hospital? Did you have to wear a mask in your room there?
Yes, I did have to wear my mask, but again, only when there were others coming into the room. Once I was in the postpartum room and it was just he and I and the baby, we didn't have to wear a mask.
Okay. And then how long did you end up staying with your first baby? Because sometimes if a mom is GBS positive, they'll keep a mama a good 48 hours to keep an eye on the baby. If she's negative, sometimes they'll let her go early. Or if it's a first baby, sometimes they'll keep you closer to 48 hours. Did you stay?
We were in the hospital for 3 whole days.
Okay. Okay.
The reason for that was at the time that they gave me the epidural, the anesthesiologist went a little too deep into my spine. So I was leaking fluid.
Mm-hmm.
That caused me to have these terrible, terrible, terrible headaches where it felt like it just felt like pressure. Like if I was in a submarine and just somewhere like deep, deep into water where I couldn't even get up because it felt like my head wanted to explode.
Explode. Yeah. Yeah. You got an epidural headache.
Yes. So that was the reason why we stood there for so long. It wasn't necessarily because of the baby. The baby did have a bit of a fever when he was born. So they were keeping an eye on him due to that. But I think so actually no. So if it would have been for the baby, we would have stood there for I would say 48 hours because it did states in order for them to get the test because they ran tests on him to make sure everything was good and they also gave him some antibiotics
Mm-hmm.
as a precaution if there was something. But it was really because I had a fever at the time that I gave birth, which is how he ended up with the fever.
Okay.
So he was fine. So if it was for the baby, we would have left in 48 hours. But due to my headache, we did have to stay an extra day because we weren't sure if they were going to do this procedure of patching that where the fluid was.
Yeah, the blood patch. Yeah.
Yes.
So, see, we were texting back and forth, listeners, because she had this excruciating headache. And I said, talk to them. It sounds like you have an epidural headache.
Right.
And so it was that process to have them come in and double check what was going on.
And you know what, Michelle? I'm so glad again, like you were there every step of the way for me. I don't know how I would have done it, honestly, without you because you were there and you answered all of my questions. And the thing with this epidural headache, the only thing that I didn't like when I was at the hospital is that I was explaining to the nurses and even the doctor what I was feeling. And they just kept telling me that what I was feeling was absolutely normal.
Right.
But I spoke to you. This is when you told me, hey, ask to speak to the anesthesiologist because it sounds like you have an epidural headache. And that's exactly what it was. I followed your direction. I spoke to the anesthesiologist. He came to me directly first. And then the first thing he asked me was like, did anything go wrong with your epidural? And
Yep.
I was like, no, like nobody mentioned anything going wrong at all. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to go check your records. And then he comes back a few minutes later and he tells me, okay, yeah, this is what happened. They went a little too deep and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like how they didn't just mention that from the beginning, because it wasn't normal. Does it happen? Yes. But it wasn't a normal thing. Like,
Yeah. And the symptoms you were describing, I'm like, this sounds like an epidural headache.
and that's exactly what it was. Because I was feeling the way that I was, they started talking about the patch, but due to COVID, it's something that they could have done there if things were normal, but due to COVID, it would have had to be like an outpatient procedure, and I would have had to go to a different hospital
Oh, wow.
in order to get that done. So two reasons why I didn't want that was one, I didn't want them going into my back again, and two, I didn't want to expose myself and going into another hospital.
Yeah.
So that's why we waited out. I was taking some medication. They gave me like some caffeine pills and ibuprofen. luckily things started to subside and I decided to come home. I decided to let time heal and luckily it did.
Yeah, good. And it was starting to subside a little bit. But how has postpartum been being a first time mom?
Oh man, COVID has really done its job. Being a first time mom, coming home, it's so scary, you know? And because of COVID, I wasn't able to have family or friends come over to help me through the transition, to teach me, to point me in the direction whether I'm doing this right or try it this way. Postpartum, I definitely had a serious case of the baby blues. And I want to say I even had postpartum for another 2 whole weeks. It was a good month that I very, very depressed.
Okay.
And that was hard. You know, like when I was pregnant, I envisioned coming home and being so happy and full of joy with my baby. And once I got home, I felt the joy and I felt all of that while I was at the hospital. But once I got home, things just took a turn and it was just weird. It, I, how do I say this? It's not that I didn't love my baby because I did love him. I would look at him and I knew that I love him, but there was something lacking. Like I was just so unhappy for a while and I felt so alone. And my boyfriend, like James, thank God, like he was here and he was, oh my God, he was such a blessing. And he just kept trying to make me feel better. And he never ever made me feel bad for the way that I was feeling and the things that I was saying. He knew that there was something that it was just all due to the postpartum and the pregnancy. And luckily, again, here, you, Michelle, realize again.
Yeah.
he,
Yeah.
yeah, he texted you and you know, letting you know what was going on. And that's when you told him about the what you call it when you give birth and the placenta. Once the placenta leaves, that you lose all of your hormones, all of your 9 months or really 10 months of pregnancy hormones. So of course things are like unbalanced. And when you told him that, of course he came to me with that information, and that is what allowed me, and that's what helped me get through the depression. Because in the very beginning,
Good.
it was just so hard and it was unmanageable. I couldn't control any of my emotions. I was just crying and I couldn't stop it. And then when he told me that information, it was just like, okay.
Video too.
Oh yes, and the videos, and then you know your postpartum videos, all of it. It was just it made me feel like okay, I'm not crazy and I'm not a terrible mother. Like this is just my body. Like this is not me. This is just something that's happening right now. But this is not me. It's not the way it's gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without that stuff and your help, Michelle, I just don't know. I would have made it somehow, but so much better. It was like we couldn't thank you enough, seriously.
Oh, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful, especially in this pandemic where families are more isolated. And I remember you reaching out and we were texting and like, it sounds like baby blues and look out for this for postpartum depression, because if you don't know,
Right,
it just can sideswipe you.
right.
And I know when I had my baby, my last baby, 5 weeks in, oh, the postpartum, it just hit me. It hit me. And thank goodness I knew what to do and I knew it was normal and I had friends in the field I could reach out to.
Mm.
But if you don't know, it's overwhelming for everybody.
It can easily turn into a real actual depression, you know, like if
Mhm.
you don't know, then you can easily go into this funk and it's just going to have like a domino effect. Like it's going to turn into a snowball, like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if your partner doesn't know that this is normal, it can cause strain in your relationship too. And you don't ever want to scare families, but I don't want my families blindsided by things either.
No, it's good to know because I don't know how it would have been without the knowledge that you provided us with. I really don't know. Like I said it before, like you were my fairy godmother.
Oh, thank you.
Really, we appreciate you. We're so lucky. We're so blessed that we found you.
I feel the same way, honestly. So I do so much. So, how has postpartum been beyond that first month? Is it getting a little easier or?
It's gotten easier in the sense of me taking care of the baby. Like I actually know my baby now, and I know
Yeah.
using God's mean and cry in that. So it's gotten easier in that sense, but it's also been kind of sad because of COVID. You can't really have your visitors.
Yeah.
You can't really go places. And on top of that, like you're tired. You're a new mom. Like James, he is self-employed, so he works long hours. So it's just me and the baby. And sometimes you just want a break. You just
Yeah.
be able to sleep or have a
Or pee by yourself.
yeah.
I just want to pee by myself for 1 minute. Yeah. So.
But COVID, due to everything, it's been hard in that sense of not being able to have support around.
Yeah. Have you found any online groups with mamas at all, or is that
No.
not your cup of tea?
So I thought about it, but I haven't like looked for it, to be honest.
Okay.
If COVID wasn't going on, I would definitely be the mom going to the meetings
Okay.
because I love to make new friends, especially mamas that are going through the same thing as, raising their child at the same time I am.
Right.
I did think about it of looking for a support group online, but I never pursued it. So I think if I were to, yeah, I still can.
Right.
Sounds of something that interests me, but I don't know. I don't know why I haven't done it, to be honest.
Because sometimes you're just busy taking care of your baby, and that becomes your whole focus, I think, sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, that could easily be.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I found with my kids. We didn't have online support groups 34 years ago, 27 years ago,
Mhm.
even 21 years ago. And it was just starting with my 12-year-old. And so it can be really isolating to be at home with your baby. And if your partner works, my children's father did too, worked a lot of hours. And so I think now that's why sometimes I worry, like with my mamas with COVID, how are you doing? Are you feeling too isolated? That kind of stuff.
Mhm. No, but now, like I was saying earlier, like we have been more at ease.
Good.
So I've gone to visit friends, family,
Oh, good.
and I do make sure that those that I am visiting are also people who are taking care of themselves and are not constantly in the streets, because
Yeah.
I'm just trying to prevent any of us getting sick. So I'm very selective of who I visit.
Right.
But it's been better because I actually have had human contact. So
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's what I think. You isolate in the pregnancy and then you're isolating postpartum. And then, partners need to work to support the family. And it's weighing out your safety and your mental health and your need for human contact.
yeah.
These are some really, I don't even have the words for what we keep saying unprecedented, but these are really unusual times. But thank goodness we do have the technology to do Zoom calls or
Right.
connect that way too, which is good.
Yeah. COVID, makes things hard, but as humans, we just adapt, right? With
Mm-hmm.
and we find ways, and that's it. I think what's super important is, like you were saying earlier, is that your partner knows, and all of these different things, and being supportive. Like, I just having a supportive partner is what has kept me honestly sane throughout all of it.
Yeah.
I can only imagine from the mamas who are alone. Like, I can see that being extremely hard for them, and it makes me sad to even just think about it.
Yeah.
But having a supportive partner during these times is everything.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. I won't cue you guys much longer, but can I ask real quickly, can you each share one pearl of wisdom or something that you want the families to know or that you would like to share from your experience?
Yes, they need you.
Thank you.
I'm serious. From a man's perspective and everything, going into this, I'm an open-minded person. I didn't know exactly what was going on, what you had to tell us, and everything else, but I kept an open ear. And within, I think, the first couple minutes of you speaking, it was like, oh, damn, like I knew it was a serious thing, but it just became that much more serious. And I think that any man out there that cares a lot about his partner and the process that she's going through, he needs to listen to what you have to say, because without your guidance and knowledge, like I said to you before, I would have been a deer in the headlights. I wouldn't have had really much perspective. And, when I don't know exactly what's going on, I let the professional take over. And in the medical field, you can really end up in a bad place when you let them just do what they want. So having some of the things that you told us, and just a tool belt, a mental tool belt from you, it was incredible. It made the experience that much better. Going into it, like, round two, we have another baby, things would definitely be a little different. The first time is always a learning curve, and I mean, it's a learning curve every time you go in. Just having you, even though, like, you weren't in the room with us, you were.
Hmm.
And I would highly recommend any man that cares about his woman to definitely take your guidance and knowledge, and don't forget it. Use it.
Mhm. Thank you. It's making me teary. I think that's the value that doulas can bring to families.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I recommend anybody that's pregnant. I would want them to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before, during, and after, when all of this went down, without some of the things that you said to me, I would have been lost. I'm sure I wouldn't have connected with her in the ways that she needed me to. And the whole experience wouldn't have gone as pleasant as it did.
Mm. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.
We're more than grateful to have you
Yes.
in our corner and, on our side. It's really just made the biggest difference.
I'm so glad.
And for me, it would be right or wrong, right there with James. For any family who's thinking or is in the process of having a baby, I think that the knowledge, it's really like educating yourself and really understanding the process of pregnancy and birth really can go so far for families. The peace of mind to me was everything. And when the unexpected, the unknown is scary.
Mm-hmm.
Families who are thinking about having a baby, or if they're in the process of everything, educating yourselves with it all, it just provides you that calmness.
I feel like that's part of what I really want to convey to families is that, and teaching those relaxation skills that, especially when our birth doesn't go as we planned, when you were explaining that, okay, I cried and then I thought, okay, I'm going to put into place what I learned and we're going to do this birth. And I feel like when families can feel calm in the midst of that, that's what this is really about. The education, the relaxation skills, and putting all that together. And then having the ability to have that person that you know their interest is you and they have your back and you can text your doula or your childbirth educator, and especially if they're not able to be there at the birth during these times, and just to have that resource, I think.
It was everything. It just gives you, again, that peace of mind. And with the peace of mind is the calmness and the confidence in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
The knowledge, the knowledge was everything for me. It gave me the peace of mind. It gave me the confidence that we could do this, that I could do this as a woman. It took the fear out completely. So that would be my recommendation to anyone, is just really just educating yourself and having someone like you in their life to really break things down for you and understand the process can really be the whole game changer when it comes to pregnancy and giving birth and even the postpartum.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I'm so grateful. Thank you. All three of you are there because I hear your little one. Thank you so much for taking this time out and just to share your experience with families, because so many of my families have already said, "Oh, I can't wait to listen. I want to hear what their experience is," because that's how we can learn.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for everything that you did for us. Thank you for being an amazing, beautiful person, and helping us bring our beautiful baby boy into this world. We couldn't have done it without you.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. I just adore you guys. You know that. So I'm so grateful. And families, just do your education, like she said. And there are resources out there for you to help you navigate your pregnancy, your birth, your postpartum, especially throughout this pandemic. And if you are enjoying the show, please share it with a friend. And you can rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, because that helps to get this valuable information to more families. So thank you again for listening.
For more great conversations like these, or to find out more information and access Michelle's library of amazing guests, go to birtheaseservices.com/podcast. For more information on the Birth Ease method, Michelle's classes, meditations, and other services, go to birtheaseservices.com.